Hello, I'm Ross, and I'm going to explain to you where Newton's equations of motion came from. These equations connect the variables S, which represents displacement, U, which represents initial velocity, V, which represents final velocity, A, which represents acceleration, and T, which represents time. Okay, now there are 5 of these equations connecting these quantities. Each one of these equations has a different one of these quantities missing. So there are 4 variables in each equation. Now, where do these equations come from? The first equation can be obtained simply from the definition of velocity. V equals S over T, which can be written as S equals Vt. Now, this is okay when the velocity, this is useful. If the velocity is constant, and you know what the velocity is, you can find out how far an object will travel, S, in a certain time t. Okay? But what if the object is accelerating? Now, if it's accelerating, we can't use this equation because this expects a constant velocity. If the acceleration is constant, we can write an average velocity, which is u plus v over 2, and the equation becomes this. Okay? Remember, this is only true if the acceleration is constant. Now, let's call that equation 1, and it has no s in it. That's the variable that's missing. The next equation can be obtained from the definition of acceleration. A equals delta v stands for change in velocity over t. Now, change in velocity is final velocity minus initial velocity. So the equation becomes this, which we can rewrite as v equals u plus at, and we'll call that the second equation, which has no what? Well, in fact, I made a mistake here. This one does have an S. It has no acceleration. This is the one here which has no S in it here. Okay. Now, where do we get the other 3 equations from? There's going to be one with no t, there's going to be one with no v, and there's going to be one with no u. All right, how do we get these equations? We get them from these 2 here. To get the equation with no t, we just eliminate t from equations 1 and 2. How do we do that? From equation 2, you can get that t equals v minus u over a. All right? So you put that v minus u over a in place of t in the first equation. And if you do that, which you should do yourselves, you will get this equation here, v squared equals u squared plus 2as. All right? How do we get the one with no v? Well, instead of v in equation 1, you put u plus at from equation 2. All right? So you put u plus at in place of v in the first equation, and you get s equals ut plus a half at squared. In order to get u, one with no u, it's quite similar. You get u from the second equation as v minus at, and instead of u in the first equation, you put v minus at from the second equation, and when you simplify that, you will get s equals vt minus a half at squared. Right, so here we have the 5 equations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you get an equation of motion problem where you're told some of these variables and you have to calculate the value of another one, you write down a list of the number of the values you're given for some of these variables. You need three variables. And you're asked about a fourth one. So all you do is look through these 5 equations and ask yourself which of these equations contains those 4 variables. And then you'll be able to do all the equation of motion questions in your workbook, and I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Thank you. Bye.